Greetings everybody. Today's class is about structure, function and properties of skeletal muscle, and I am your teacher Dr. Mudassir Mirza, Assistant Professor of Physiology. Now let us begin. What are all things we are going to learn today? At the end of the class, the student should be able to describe the structure of skeletal muscle, enumerate and explain the properties of skeletal muscle fiber, explain the effect of multiple stimuli, understand the concept of size principle, and describe the length tension curve. Now moving on to the structure of skeletal muscle fiber. The skeletal muscle fiber is composed of numerous parallel elongated cells referred to as muscle fiber. So this is the muscle extending from one bone to another bone with its tendinous attachments. Inside each skeletal muscle there are muscle fibers. These muscle fibers by definition are the smallest contractile units of skeletal muscle is a multinucleated elongated cell called muscle fiber or myofiber. So this is the elongated contractile unit which is multinucleated and present within the muscle, which is called as muscle fiber or myofiber. Structurally, it is about 10 to 100 microns in diameter. Its diameter is 10 to 100 microns and its length varies with the length of the muscle. Certain times it extends to the entire length of the muscle. From this end to this end it might extend. So its length is variable, whereas diameter is varying between 10 to 100. Under electron microscope, when we see subcellular structure of muscle fibers are seen to be composed of smaller fibrous structures which are 1 micron in diameter, which are about 1 micron in diameter, which are called as myofibrils, which are arranged again. These are the myofibrils. These dark structures what you are seeing are the myofibrils, which are about 1 micron in diameter, which are again arranged parallel along the long axis of the muscle cell. Each myofibril is further divided into thick and thin myofilament, which are arranged parallel along the long axis of the muscle fiber. The arrangement of thick and thin filament produces cross striations. You can see here across the muscle fiber there are striations, striped appearance or striations. This is due to the parallel arrangement of thick and thin filament. The light band in this cross striation is called as I band, and the dark band is called as A band. A band is due to presence of thick filament, whereas I band is mainly composed of thin filament. Now this thin filament extends perpendicularly from a thick line. Here again you can see there is a light band which is called as I band and a dark band which is called as A band. Now I band is due to presence of thin filament which extend from a thick central line perpendicular to the axis of muscle, which is called as Z line. This Z line is mainly comprised of lattice-like protein from which thin filaments extend perpendicularly to this Z line. The gap between the termination of thin filament, so they run perpendicularly in either directions and terminate here. Gap between these actin filaments is called as H band. So here is the place where they terminate. Okay, so this is the Z line. From here again actin filaments are running perpendicularly and here they are terminating. So the area where they terminate is called as H band. The central part of H band is called as M line. The part of the myofibril between two consecutive Z lines is called as sarcomere, which is the fundamental contractile unit of the muscle. its length varies between 2 to 2.6 microns in length. Now you can see here the muscle fiber, the skeletal muscle fiber is surrounded by a sheath which is called as sarcolemma. Now this sarcolemma, the main function of this sarcolemma is to conduct the wave of depolarization from motor and plate. Now you might have learned it is a part of neuromuscular junction, from where the action potential is transmitted from the nerve to the muscle. From the motor end plates, which is a part of nerve muscle junction, the wave of depolarization is propagated along the sarcolemma. That is one important function of sarcolemma, that is propagation of wave of depolarization. Next is it electrically isolates the two muscle fibers. It acts as an insulator between two muscle fibers. Okay. Next, another important function is it provides a resistance for overstretching of the muscle. That is, it contributes to the elasticity of the muscle. As it is present parallel to the contractile filament, it forms the part of parallel elastic element, PEE, or parallel elastic element, which will be discussed later on when I am describing you the property of elasticity of the muscles. Inside sarcolemma, we find sarcoplasm, which contains a lot of mitochondria, Golgi apparatus, and nucleus. Now, in this figure, you can see here there is an elaborate network of anastomosing tubules. These are sarcotubular system. Here you can see the blue structure, which are the tubules, which are called T tubules, and adjacent to it, the network of anastomosing structure is sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is modified endoplasmic reticulum. Now this modified endoplasmic reticulum, that is sarcoplasmic reticulum, along with this tubule forms sarcotubular system, which consists of T tubules, this blue structure, tubular structure, which is penetrating the muscle fiber at the junction of dark band and the light band, is called as T tubule. And this yellow structure is called as sarcoplasmic reticulum. The space inside the T tubule is the extension of extracellular fluid. The space in the T tubules is the extension of extracellular fluid. Now, when this T tubules come in contact with sarcoplasmic reticulum, it finds the dilated structures. The sarcoplasmic reticulum dilates when it comes in close contact with these T tubules. This dilated part of sarcoplasmic reticulum is called as cisternae. This cisternae along with T tubules is called as a triad, which plays a very important role in excitation contraction coupling. In this triad region, the T tubules have voltage gated calcium channels, which are called as dihydropyridine channels or dihydropyridine receptors. The calcium channels present on the sarcoplasmic reticulum cisternal part are ryanodine receptors or RYR receptors, which release calcium on stimulation. The important role played by sarcoplasmic reticulum inside the muscle is to store calcium, which is stored bound to calsequestrin. That was all about sarcotubular system, which plays an important role in excitation contraction coupling. Now let us see the proteins of contractile elements. First and foremost, the thin filament. The thin filament mainly consists of actin. Actin is about 7 nanometers in diameter and around 1 micron in length. This actin in vitro exists in two forms, the globular form and the F form, the G-actin form and the F-actin form. This G-actin form is a globular actin monomer, which has binding sites for 6 components. Number 1, the actin monomer itself. Number 2, myosin. Number 3, tropomyosin. Number 4, troponin I. Number 5, ATP. And last is cations. This G-actin monomer polymerizes by attaching to other G-actin and forms F-actin or fibrous actin, which consists of minimum 300 or more monomers of G-actin. The basic structure of thin filament consists of two strands of F-actin polymer as double-stranded helix. Now, on this double-stranded helix of F-actin are other proteins which are called as regulatory proteins. The other proteins are tropomyosin. The tropomyosin is an elongated protein which consists of two alpha helix which are coiled around itself to form a coiled structure. Coiled structure. Here you can see a brown colored structure, the coiled structure, that is tropomyosin, as labeled here. Yeah, as labeled here, the coiled structure, that is tropomyosin. Now this tropomyosin, it present in the grooves of F-actin spaced by 180 degrees. That is, if one tropomyosin is present on this side, the other tropomyosin is present on the opposite side, separated by 180 degrees. So one tropomyosin you can see here on the screen, the other tropomyosin will be behind the screen, exactly opposite on the back side. The other part of the tropomyosin you can see here, it is going inside, so it is present on the back side of the screen, separated by 180 degrees. Each tropomyosin extends over 7 actin monomers. If you see here carefully and count, it would be 7 actin monomers. Next, another important protein associated with thin filament is troponin. Troponin complex consists of 3 components: troponin T, troponin C and troponin I, which are denoted by TNT, TNC and TNI. Troponin T helps in binding other two troponin components to tropomyosin and to F-actin, whereas troponin C is a cation acceptor or calcium acceptor. Troponin I acts as an inhibitor of excitation contraction coupling. Basically, it acts as an inhibitor of excitation contraction coupling by masking the site of binding of myosin to the actin. As we know that myosin is a molecular motor which binds with actin and pushes it inside for causing the contraction. That binding site of myosin over the actin is masked by troponin I. That's how it regulates the excitation contraction coupling or contraction of the muscle. Now let us see the thick filament, the other protein of contractile element, that is thick filament. This thick filament is double the size in diameter of thin filament, which was about 7 nanometers. So this would be roughly around 14 to 15 nanometers. It is made up of mainly myosin. The myosin found in humans is myosin type 2. It has two globular heads. You can see here it has two globular head part and a tail part. The head part is made up of light chains and the tail part is made up of heavy chains. The head part has a binding site to actin and also a catalytic region which hydrolyzes ATP. It acts as a regulatory light chain which regulates the binding of myosin to the actin during contraction. Now, if we see how they are arranged in the muscle in cross sections, here we can see, when we see the cross section along the just near the Z line, you will find only the thin filaments, whereas if you see the cut section in the mid region between the dark band, you will find both the actin and myosin, whereas if you see the cross section near the M band, you will find only the myosin. So that is all about the important contractile proteins. The other important proteins associated with contractile proteins are contractile elements are: number one, actinin, which helps in binding the actin filament. This is the actin filament to the Z line. The other protein is titin. Titin. Titin is a protein which acts as a scaffolding, which tethers this M line to Z line. You can see here this titin is extending from Z line to the M line. So it acts as a scaffolding for a sarcomere. From each Z line, it is extending towards the center, towards the M line. So its main function is to act as a scaffolding and also to maintain the structure of sarcomere and preventing it from overstretching. So it forms the elastic element which is in series with the contractile element. So hence it forms a part of series elastic element. Previously in my class I said that plasma membrane forms the parallel elastic element of contractile proteins, which exists in parallel to the contractile proteins. Here titin exists in series. It is existing in series with the contractile elements. Hence it is called as series elastic element of contractile proteins, which contributes to elasticity property of skeletal muscle fiber. That is, it resists the overstretching of sarcomere. Okay, that's all about the important proteins of contractile element. Last but not the least is desmin. Desmin is one protein which attaches the Z line to plasma membrane. Next important component of contractile proteins is dystrophin glycoprotein complex. This provides a scaffolding for the contractile elements, mainly the actin. Here you can see this dystrophin glycoprotein complex consists of a dystrophin, this rod-like protein, blue color rod-like protein called as dystrophin, which is attached to dystroglycan, beta and alpha, which is again attached to another riveting protein, that is merosin. Adjacent to it, other proteins, transmembrane proteins, which help in scaffolding the actin are the sarcoglycan complex consisting of 4 subunits. So the main function of this dystrophin glycoprotein complex is to provide extra strength to the muscle by providing scaffolding to the fibrils, that is mainly the thin filament. Disruption or any absence or any mutation in this dystrophin glycoprotein complex leads to several types of muscular dystrophies. By definition, muscular dystrophy is a disease that causes progressive weakness of skeletal muscles and cardiac muscle. The most severe form of muscular dystrophy is Duchenne's dystrophy, in which there is a mutation which leads to complete absence of dystrophin protein. Another type of muscular dystrophy is Becker's muscular dystrophy, in which the dystrophin protein is present but in altered state. This is much milder form than Duchenne's dystrophy. So another type of muscular dystrophy are related to desmin related myopathies, which are due to the absence of desmin protein. So that was about the structural components of skeletal muscle fiber. Now moving on to the properties of skeletal muscle. What do you mean by property of skeletal muscle, or what do you mean by properties? Property of any structure or any component is its unique characteristic feature. Uniqueness, how unique we are. Everybody has their own properties. In other words, they are how much unique they are, when compared to others, or how they stand out from the crowd. That's a unique characteristic feature or property of that person or that thing. In the same way, skeletal muscle owns certain characteristic properties which are called as properties of skeletal muscle. They are excitability, which obeys all or none phenomena, and it has a refractory period. And then is contractility, and this contractility shows beneficial effect, which shows trepe, tetanus, and the skeletal muscle has a property of undergoing fatigue. And then it obeys the Frank-Starling law, which shows the relationship between length and the tension, initial length and the tension developed in the muscle. And then conductivity, extensibility, elasticity, and last but not the least is tone. Now let us go into the detail. Moving on to the first property, that is excitability. Excitability means the property of the muscle fiber by virtue of which it responds by shortening or contraction when stimulated by a suitable stimulus, which could be a mechanical stimulus, thermal stimulus, chemical stimulus, or electrical stimulus. By using the term suitable stimulus, I want to say that this skeletal muscle obeys all or none phenomena, all or none law or all or none phenomena. So let me revise you, which you might have learnt about all or none phenomena in your nerve muscle properties of nerve fiber. So what is all or none phenomena? It states that only a threshold stimulus can elicit a response. Subthreshold stimulus fails to elicit a response, and when suprathreshold stimulus is given, response is same as by threshold stimulus, provided experimental conditions remain same for the muscle fiber. So this is all or none phenomena, which means the muscle fiber would respond or would not respond at all. It would respond only if threshold stimulus is given. It will not respond to subthreshold stimulus, and also it will respond in the same way if suprathreshold stimulus is given, provided experimental conditions remain same for the muscle fiber. That's about excitability. Now what is the measure for excitability? It is chronaxy. So chronaxy also you might have learned while learning about the properties of the nerve. So what is chronaxy? Chronaxy is the time required for a stimulus of double the Rho base strength to produce a response, which is about 0.25 to 1 millisecond for skeletal muscle. Yes. Now let us see how is the action potential, which is seen as an excitable property of the skeletal muscle. The action potential is quite similar to the action potential seen in the nerve, which consists of a resting membrane potential of minus 90 millivolts, and the moment the depolarizing level reaches minus 50 millivolts, it fires, which is called as firing level. Then after it reaches the firing level, it depolarizes, that is it reaches the potential from minus 50 to plus 30, and then it repolarizes, that is it falls from plus 30 to the baseline, that is 90, and it also goes beyond, which is called as hyperpolarization. So the basic amplitude to which the action potential in a skeletal muscle reaches is 120 millivolts. The molecular basis for this is the depolarization is due to, as we know, it is due to sodium influx, and repolarization due to potassium efflux. The duration of this each action potential in a skeletal muscle is 2 to 4 milliseconds. Now moving on to another property, that is refractory period. What do you mean by refractory period? After stimulus, the brief period during which the muscle is not excitable, it is refractory to second stimulus. So by definition, refractory period is after stimulation, the period during which muscle is not excitable by second stimulus is called as refractory period. It is subdivided into absolute refractory period, which lasts for about 1 to 3 milliseconds, that is from the upstroke to the peak, and to some extent of the repolarization phase. That is the period during which absolute refractory period is there, that is stimulus of any strength would not elicit another response, another action potential in the skeletal muscle, and then there is a relative refractory period which lasts for about 1 millisecond. That is the part of repolarization phase and hyperpolarization phase. During this phase, if a stimulus is given, there is every chance of expecting a response. That's why it is called a relative refractory period. Now moving on to another property of skeletal muscle, that is contractility. What do you mean by contractility? The property of skeletal muscle fiber by virtue of which it shortens or contracts on stimulation. Now, on stimulation of a single muscle fiber with single action potential generates a contraction which is called as muscle twitch. Remember, muscle twitch. Now, what do you mean by muscle twitch? This here figure what you are seeing is a muscle twitch. Okay, so this muscle twitch has following components. There is a point of stimulation. This PS represents the point of stimulation, and then there is a latent period. So this latent period is a period duration between the point of stimulation and the contraction. What exactly we see? Contraction in the muscle fiber we see. Okay, that is latent period. Then there is a contraction phase. This contraction phase is from the beginning of from the baseline to the peak of the muscle twitch, and then there is a relaxation phase which begins from the peak of the contraction phase to the baseline. The latent period, you can see here, it lasts for about 1 millisecond. The contraction phase lasts for about 4 milliseconds, and relaxation phase, it lasts for about 7 milliseconds. Okay, that was about the muscle twitch, which is the brief contraction of muscle fiber caused by single action potential. Now, what is the contraction, muscle contraction we see in our muscles in general day-to-day life? That is muscle contraction. It is a summated response of all the muscle fibers in the muscle. Okay. Now, the contraction again are of two types: isotonic contraction and isometric contraction. What do you mean by isotonic contraction? The contraction in which there is change in length with the tonicity maintained normal is called as isotonic contraction. And the contraction in which the muscle length is maintained constant is called as isometric contraction. Now, this duration of muscle twitch, it basically depends on the types of muscle fibers. Now, what are these muscle fibers? The muscle fibers are basically classified into type 1 and type 2. The type 2 is again classified into type 2A and type 2B. So it is more of memorizing. Here are the muscle fibers which contribute to the duration of muscle twitch, and also it plays a very important role in how the muscle contracts and how the motor units are recruited. Okay, so based on the muscle fibers, how they respond, they are classified into slow, intermediate and fast. There is also another classification which names them as type 1, type 2A and type 2B. Now, what are the different components? What are the main differences? We'll see. First difference is contraction speed. Obviously, in slow fibers it is slow. Intermediate and fast, it is fast. The tension developed is low in slow, whereas in intermediate it is intermediate, whereas the tension is very high in the fast fibers. Fatigue development, it is very slow in slow fibers or type 1 fibers. It is intermediate in the intermediate fibers, and very quickly the fast fibers set into fatigue. Now coming to the color is red, the others are white. Now this is red because it contains a lot of myoglobin and mitochondria. You can see here the myoglobin and mitochondria are high in slow, whereas they are low in other types of fibers, that is in intermediate and fast fibers. Glycolytic enzymes obviously will be low in slow and high in others because they depend more on anaerobic glycolysis for their energy. The alternative names given here are type 1 slow. For intermediate are fast resistant to fatigue, and for type 3 or fast fibers it is fast fatigable. Now this slow, fast resistant, slow FR and FF is based on the motor units related to these muscle fibers. Okay. Now moving on to next property, that is summation. What is the summation? Additional response in contraction due to additional activation of contractile elements caused by repeated stimulation before relaxation. Now, how does it occur? Does it obey the all or none phenomena? Yes or no? Does it contradict? No, it does not contradict all or none phenomena. And yes, the skeletal muscle still obeys the all or none phenomena. But how it is causing summation? Let us see. Now, here you can see the difference in electrical response and contractile response. In the lower part of this figure, you can see the contractile response, which whose duration is about 15 milliseconds, which is much more higher than the duration of electrical response, that is 4 milliseconds. So as the duration of contractile response is much more, there is every possibility of getting another contractile response, or contractile elements of the muscle could get activated if another electrical event is there during this period, that is from 6 milliseconds to 20 milliseconds. If we give another electrical stimuli, there is every possibility of contractile elements getting activated and we getting a contractile response. That is what is happening in summation. So by definition, additional response in contraction due to additional activation of contractile elements caused by repeated stimulation before relaxation. So how does it respond? What is the response? Basically, there is increase in the tension. So the first and foremost response which we see when we give two successive stimuli is wave summation. So by definition, which is increase in tension or force of contraction when two successive stimuli are given. So when two successive stimuli are given, you can see here the waves get summated and there is increase in the tension. Now when wave summation occurs, this wave summation is causing increase in tension. Now this increase in tension is due to more and more contractile elements getting activated. Now this more and more contractile elements are getting activated is called as beneficial effect. Now what is this beneficial effect? The second stimuli, when we are putting the second stimuli, the additional contractile elements are getting activated, or whatever contractile elements are there, they get activated more due to the effect of previous stimuli. During previous stimuli, what happens? There is calcium which is put into the which is released near the contractile filaments. As I have said earlier in my earlier part of the class, the most important function of sarcoplasmic reticulum is to store the calcium. During contraction, it releases the calcium, which plays a very important role, crucial role in contraction. So when the muscle is contracting, calcium is released. Now, if before relaxation, another stimuli is given, the calcium is already there, some more calcium would be released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which adds to the amount of calcium present inside the sarcoplasm around the contractile elements. So additional amount of binding of actin-myosin interaction would occur, and there is additional increase in contractile response and additional increase in force of contraction or additional increase in the tension, which is the beneficial effect. Now, how do we apply in our day-to-day life? Yes, for every property, whatever we are learning, we have to apply in our day-to-day life. The application of beneficial effect of wave summation in our day-to-day life is asking the athletes to do warm-up. Before doing any match, before going for any sports event, they do warm-up so that their contractile elements are already ready to receive uh, the stimuli, so that the tension developed in their muscles and the force of contraction is better while they are performing in any sports event. So that's about the wave summation. Another part, when we go further, when we are giving more than two stimuli, let us see what happens. When we are giving more than two stimuli, you can see a incomplete tetanus, which is called as trepe. So what is trepe? It is a sustained contraction with the periods of intermittent relaxation. Here you can see there is intermittent relaxation periods, which is called as incomplete tetanus or trepe. Now, when you give continuous stimulation, the contractile phase fuses. Contractile component fuses, and there is a sustained contraction without any period of intermittent relaxation. Now the frequency of stimuli at which the contractile phase fuses is called as fusion frequency. So to repeat, sustained contraction with no relaxation is called as tetanus, and the frequency at which tetanus occurs or the contractile component fuses is called as fusion frequency. So that is about the summation component. Moving on to the other related properties. One of them is post-tetanic potentiation. The phenomena of brief period of time during which, after cessation of tetanic stimulation of fast muscles, particularly fast muscles, there are three types of muscle fibers, right? Slow, intermediate and fast muscle fibers. So here we are speaking about the fast muscle fibers. A single stimulus induces a twitch tension of higher amplitude than elicited in a muscle not subjected to previous state of tetanization. Now this response of development of higher twitch tension is only for a brief period after tetanic stimulation, which is called as post-tetanic potentiation. Now, in tetanic contraction or sustained contraction, there is asynchronous discharge of motor units. So when the muscle contraction as a whole it is occurring, we know that in tetanic contraction there is a sustained contraction without any relaxation. So are all the muscle fibers contracting? No. There is asynchronous discharge of motor units. One motor unit will be discharging at one point of time and other will be discharging at another point, so that when we see the muscle as a whole, it is contracted. There is a sustained contraction in the muscle, but the motor units which are firing inside it are asynchronous. That is, they are firing at different levels. One is firing, for example, one is firing at a time of say 5 minutes. The other would be firing at 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes or so. But as a whole, when you see the muscle will be contracted, there is a sustained muscle contraction. Now this sustained muscle contraction, in this sustained muscle contraction, there is asynchronous discharge of motor units. Now one more question to you, all of you. Do we see sustained muscle contraction or tetanic contraction in our body? Yes or no? The answer is yes. We do see sustained muscle contraction or tetanic contraction in our muscle, that is seen in anti-gravity muscles. Normally when we are standing for a long period of time, we see that anti-gravity muscles, the soleus muscle and the axial muscles of our body are continuously show a sustained contracted state, which is tetanic contraction. So muscle as a whole shows a sustained tetanic contraction, whereas inside the muscle, the motor units will be firing at different times and for different durations, so that there is sustained contraction but there is asynchronous discharge in the motor units. Now what do you mean by this motor unit? Motor unit is a very simple term. You know the home motor, it has got a wire and a motor, a dynamo. In the same way, we have got myosin, which is acts as a molecular motor to which a nerve fiber, the electrical wire, is attached. So the electrical wire, the nerve with its innervated nerve fibers is called as with its innervated muscle fibers is called as motor unit. So by definition, motor unit is a nerve fiber with the muscle fibers innervated by it is called as motor unit. Now these motor units are of three types. One is slow, another one is fast, resistant to fatigue, another one is fast and fatigable, FF, easy to fatigue. Sorry, there is a typing mistake here. FF is fast and non-resistant to fatigue. Now coming to the asynchronous discharge and recruitment of this motor units. Just now I said that there is asynchronous discharge of motor fibers when there is sustained contraction of muscle. Now, how are these muscle fibers recruited? I said one muscle fiber is contracting for 5 minutes, other is contracting for 8 minutes, other is contracting for 10 minutes, 11 minutes, so on and so forth. But as a whole, muscle is contracting, the muscle is showing sustained contraction. So how is this recruitment of motor units done? So for the recruitment of motor units of muscle, they follow a size principle which states that during any contraction, the S fibers are recruited first, and then FR fibers are recruited, and finally FF fibers are recruited. So that is size principle, which is a very important concept we should understand. Now coming to another component or another characteristic feature of skeletal muscle, that is phenomena of fatigue. By definition, it is a phenomena of temporary reversible loss of function. Temporary reversible loss of function. What is the function of muscle? To contract. So temporary reversible loss of contractility of muscle is called as fatigue. Now when we are stimulating a muscle continuously, you can see here initially there is a beneficial effect. So these numbers are the number of stimuli what we have given. When we have given first stimuli, we see a response. When we have given immediately a second stimuli, we see a response with higher tension. This is due to beneficial effect. And subsequently you can see that relaxation phase is getting prolonged. Now for 10th stimulus, you can see from the 5th or 6th stimuli, the relaxation period is completely prolonging. It is becoming longer and longer until for when you see the 10th stimuli, when we are giving a 10th or 11th stimuli, it is not at all reaching the baseline. That is, the muscle has remained in the contracted state and it is not functioning, that it is not responding to any other stimuli. It has gone into a state of fatigue in a contracted state. Now let us see the Frank-Starling law or the length tension relationship, which is another important property of the skeletal muscle. For this, you should understand what is passive tension, total tension, active tension, and its relationship with the initial length. The passive tension is the tension developed in the muscle at complete rest, and the total tension is amount of tension developed when muscle is isotonically stimulated. Active tension is the difference between the total tension developed and the passive tension present. Now, when the experiment was done by uh, by drawing the graph between the length of the sarcomere on x-axis and tension developed in the sarcomere on the y-axis, a relationship was found, was a graph like this. It was found that with the increase in initial length, there was increase in tension up to certain limits, and then the tension developed in the muscle was falling as the initial length of the sarcomere was increasing beyond certain limits. Henceforth, Otto Frank and Starling, E.H. Starling, proposed a law that active tension developed, a force of contraction is directly proportional to initial length of the muscle within physiological limits. Now, why is it so? Why it is happening? The molecular basis was later on discovered, and it was seen that the interactions between the actin and myosin were increasing as the initial length of the muscle was increasing. As the initial length of the muscle was increasing, there was more and more interaction between actin and myosin, and more tension developed henceforth. So it reached maximum at certain initial length. This initial length at which the maximum active tension developed was observed is called as resting length. So what is resting length? Is the optimal initial length of the muscle fiber at which active tension developed is maximum. So in our body, during rest, all the muscles are said to be innervated and attached in a resting length, that is at an optimal initial length at which active tension developed would be maximum when they are activated. That's how our muscles are optimized. The initial length of our muscles is optimized. Now beyond this initial length, the optimal resting length at which maximum tension was developed. Beyond that, what was observed was that there was least interaction. Here you can see there is no interaction between the myosin and the actin there, because they are very much far off. As they are very much far off, there is no possibility of development of tension. So tension was falling down as the initial length of the sarcomere was increasing beyond certain limits. Now coming to another property, that is elasticity. Elasticity is ability to recoil or resume the resting length after stretch, which is explained by presence of parallel elastic component and series elastic component. Now CE is the contractile element, the actin and the myosin. Now we know that actin is connected to sarcolemma, which forms the parallel elastic element, and myosin is attached to Z line with the help of series elastic element, that is titin or nebulin. Okay. So next, another important property is conductivity. It is a property of the muscle fiber by virtue of which the action potential generated propagates along the sarcolemma. Next important property in the intact human body is tone. The partial contracted state of muscle in the intact human body is tone. Generally in our body at rest, the muscle is at partial contracted state, which is called as muscle tone. How it is regulated and why it is regulated and why do we have that tone, it will be dealt with in central nervous system chapters or neurophysiology. That's all. If you have any doubts, we'll discuss in the subsequent classes. Thank you.